Have you ever felt like you were out of all toxic relationships, right? You detoxed your life, and yet there are certain memories that continue to follow you and cause you to feel as if the suffering from the past is still in your present life. If so, you're going to want to watch this video because I'm going to talk about how trauma memories affect a person, and they affect you whether you're in the relationship or not. And I say that because sometimes we think that once we detox our life, that everything springs back and life is absolutely amazing. And it will be, okay? I'm not trying to be completely negative. It will and can be amazing. But there are some things that you need to give attention to in order to get to that place. And working through trauma memories is one of them. So in this video, I want to talk about 6 ways trauma memories continue to show up in your life, and try to keep the past actively present in your life and stealing your peace, your happiness, your passion, your creativity. And the purpose of being able to see it, to see how it's affecting your life, is so that you can start changing it. We can't change what we don't see. We can't work through what we don't understand. So the first step is bringing what's going on into our conscious awareness. Okay, with that in mind, let's get started. For those that don't know me, my name is Michele. I'm a life and relationship coach. I specialize in C-PTSD recovery and narcissistic abuse recovery. I'm also the founder of the Thriver School of Transformation, which is a monthly membership where we meet together live on Zoom and we work through the side effects of C-PTSD together. So if you're interested in that, take a look at the link over here. Okay, let's talk about those 6 ways trauma memories continue to plague your life, even if the toxic person is gone and has been for a long time. Number 1 is with intrusive thoughts. Okay, when it comes to trauma memories, they're not something that you think about and then you realize that it's a trauma memory. No, it's like they're in your mind, in your face, without being invited. They can come up at any time. Okay, so because of that, because it just seems to be out of nowhere and persistent, it can feel really overwhelming. And our tendency is to try not to feel or see the things that are coming up inside of us. And this only provokes the trauma memories more, because as the saying goes, what we resist persists. So it's very much like if you're in the ocean or in a pool and you have a blow up beach ball and you're trying to push it under the water, the further down it goes, the higher up it's going to spring up. And that's what happens with our trauma memories. And what happens as a result is you can really develop a fear of your own thoughts. You can feel as if you are out of control of your inner self, of your most inner self. You feel out of control. And it's like this invisible war between you and what's going on in the confinements of your mind. In part, this happens because of where trauma is stored, but also on top of it, it's because there are certain unresolved issues that are tied in with the trauma at times. And the unresolved issues might be the limiting beliefs that you developed as a result of the trauma. And because they are still alive and active, it's like they turn on those trauma memories when you least expect it. And it can be very overwhelming. Number 2 is that the trauma memories are stored in the sensory areas of your brain, not in the logical narrative areas of your brain where there's speech, where there's words that can make understanding or give understanding to the memories. Okay, so for example, in a non-traumatic memory, you might remember things in a way that you can explain it, right? This happened, and then that happened, and then she said this and that. Well, trauma memories, you might have pieces that you're able to do that with. But the other part of it is it's a very sensory experience. And there's a lot of emotion in the body that is attached with the memory. And the thing with trauma is it's stored in the part of your brain where there's no time. Okay, so for example, when a normal memory is stored in your brain, you can recall it and talk about it, and you feel the distance between you and the memory. Like it's obvious it's something that happened in the past. But with the trauma memory, When it comes up in your body, because that's how it really feels, like it's coming up in your body, you feel as if you're experiencing the event in real time. It feels as if it just happened, and it could be a decade ago that it actually happened, but it comes up in your body in such a way that it feels as if it's happening again and again. And so if trauma memories aren't worked through and aren't resolved, your own memories now can be re-traumatizing you and re-traumatizing you and causing you to feel the same emotions, the same emotional states, the same limiting beliefs that happened as a result of the original trauma. And it's really strengthening the neural pathways to those behaviors, beliefs, and thoughts. And it can keep you stuck. Okay, so again, because it's stored in the areas of the brain where there's no time, it doesn't matter how long ago the trauma took place. It doesn't matter. Time isn't a factor. It's stored in 3D, in real time with the sensations intact, and it can come up in your body and you will feel it as if it just happened. So the third way is that it's sensory without narrative. Okay, so for example, I just talked about how it comes up in the body, right? Well, with memories, we can usually follow a sequence as to why we are thinking what we're thinking. We can understand how this one thing we saw made us think of this, that made us think of that, and that led to this thought. But with trauma memories, we will have that sensation in our body and there's no narrative to it. So it doesn't make sense. So just to give like a simple example, let's say in childhood, your family constantly gave you this look of contempt, right? This look of anger, of hate. They gave you this look of contempt. And whenever they gave you that look of contempt, you knew you were in trouble. So that look was paired with punishment, with emotional abandonment or aggression or verbal abuse. Okay, so for a child, that's extremely overwhelming. And so the trauma gets stored, right, in the body. And the reason it does that is because your nervous system stores it as a trauma memory. And again, it thinks it's helping you. Your nervous system thinks that by doing this, you're not going to feel the pain of what's going on. Okay, so now you're an adult. And let's say you've become successful in your job, you're at work, and you have a boss that comes in, and this particular boss really reminds you of your abusive parent. It could be in appearance, it could be in tone of voice, it could be in who knows. Okay, so this person gives this look of contempt, right? And maybe they're abusive, maybe they're not, maybe that's just their face, who knows? But they give that look of contempt, and your body is flooded with fear. You suddenly feel small and childlike. You cannot be assertive. All of your adult, mature qualities that you've been displaying at work feel as if they evaporate in that moment. And it's as if you become, you're like a child in an adult body. That's what it feels like. But there's no narrative. You're not saying, oh, because this happened, and that's because it reminds me of this, and this is why. There's no narrative to it. There's just this extreme emotion in your body. Basically, what you're having is an emotional flashback. And at that moment, your left brain, your logic, your thinking capacities, it's like it's short-circuited, and you are stuck in the right side of your brain in a half-brain state, feeling floods of fear. Okay, and that's because maybe consciously you weren't thinking of your parent or whoever, was toxic in your life, but your nervous system is always on 24/7. And the trauma that stays unresolved in our body, it is always looking for something even a tiny bit similar to that trauma. And again, it's trying to protect you, but because of that, any tiny little similarity can cause that trauma memory to throw you into an emotional flashback. Trauma memories are fragmented. Okay, there's not a logical sequence to them, and oftentimes a lot is deleted. And that's because, again, when you're going through the trauma, your brain is trying to protect you, and it may deem certain pieces of it too painful for you, and it will delete a lot of that and separate you from a lot of the pieces that it thinks are too overwhelming for you. And that can feel really overwhelming when you're trying to piece together your life. And it's like trying to put together a puzzle and a lot of the pieces are missing. It's frustrating. It prolongs your healing in the sense that it's hard to work through what you don't have the pieces for. So again, that's one of the things that your brain does in an effort to keep you safe. Number 5 is trauma memories are resistant to new information. So for example, let's say you had a talent in childhood. Let's say you were an amazing painter. Okay. I always use this illustration. I always talk about painting. You guys know why. But anyway, let's say you were an amazing painter. And every time you painted in childhood, you had a parent that just made you feel awful, that shamed you, that made you think you were doing something wrong. Okay. But despite that, there was such a love of painting for you that you were able to continue and you were able to be successful. And you sell your paintings and people are like in awe with what you do. Despite that success, if the trauma isn't resolved and it's still living inside of you, you will be plagued by what happened in childhood. You will have nightmares of your parent breaking your paintings or throwing out your paints or insulting you or doing the opposite, acting as if nothing you do is even worthy of attention. And so you're continuing life and you're trying to do the things you love. And so if you are still doing the things you love, I just want to say good for you for not stopping, because sometimes that kind of abuse can cause you to stop doing the things you love. But if you are doing the things you love and the trauma isn't resolved, you'll really have a hard time enjoying it because the trauma memories will stay focused on what happened in the past. They stay focused on that pain. And it's like all the good, you can't seem to attach this new information to what happened so that you can let go of all of that traumatic pain and emotion. And that's what happens with trauma memories. It's almost like they won't let you pay attention to the new information and the positive that you're doing because your brain is biased to danger. And so it's like, oh yeah, that's nice, but look at this. And it wants you to stare at that, not because it's trying to make your life miserable. Your brain really isn't your enemy, even though it can feel that way. It thinks that it's keeping you safe. And the way that trauma is stored just facilitates that process. Number 6 is that trauma memories are stored with an incredible amount of emotion. So when you start talking about a traumatic memory or when they come up in your body, it's not like, again, when you're talking about an emotion from the past, or not an emotion, a memory from the past that's not traumatic, you can talk about it in the emotional state that you're currently in. But when you get into a trauma memory, you literally get into the emotion that you had when you were going through the trauma. And you can feel the emotion and you feel dysregulated at that time when you're talking about it or working through it. So because there's so much emotion, it overrides whatever emotion you are in your current state. So you could wake up and be completely happy and looking forward to the day, and a trauma memory can override that and pull you into an emotion from the past. And unfortunately, if you've been through trauma for a long period of time, let's say you have PTSD, what will happen is your thoughts, your nervous system gets really biased to the negative. So you can develop a really negative outlook about life and most definitely about yourself. So you're constantly beating yourself. If your PTSD came from a long-term relationship with a toxic person, you're constantly beating yourself. Why did I stay this long? Why did I tolerate this? How can I be so stupid? But I'm a smart person. Why did I allow this? This doesn't make sense. I must be so screwed up. I will never have anyone love me again. I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life. I'm never going to heal. On and on. That negative inner critic will continue to fire and try to keep you stuck in that negative because of the trauma that's still in your body. So those are 6 ways that trauma memories show up, and they can follow you. They can follow you. You can leave a toxic work environment. You can leave toxic parents. You can leave a toxic romantic relationship. And these trauma memories will follow you until you work through the trauma and get it out of your system. And yes, you can. You can do that. It does take a little bit of time. It does take an effort, determination, self-compassion, and patience. But you can work through it. And when you do, then you're living life, not just trying to get by despite the trauma. You're living life. Okay. Just to mention a few resources that are really helpful. EMDR is really powerful when it comes to working through trauma. The eye movement desensitization process really helps with helping your left and your right brain communicate and work together. Because remember, if you have the sensory, but there's no words attached, that's your left brain. You need to get both sides of your brain on board and communicating together to work through trauma. When you've been through trauma, you wind up getting stuck in a half brain state. You wind up getting stuck in your right brain, in your emotional brain. In order to work through it, you need to bring your left brain on board, and that's an awesome process to do it. Somatic exercising developed by Peter Levine has been super amazing. I've heard a lot of people, I haven't done it myself, but I've heard a lot of people talk about that, and that's helping you to release trauma from the body. Shaking, I don't know if anyone has heard of that, but that's traumatic release exercises where you provoke your body to shake. And the thought behind that is just like animals, when they've been stuck in fight or flight, they will actually shake, which allows for a release of the fight or flight so that they can go back to living their life. But with people, we don't shake, we stifle. And so because our fight or flight with trauma is ignited, but there's nothing we've done to be able to allow that energy to release, it gets stuck in the body. So that's an awesome modality that works as well. Something else that helps is EFT, emotional freedom technique. Tapping on the meridians as you're bringing up certain events helps retrain the nervous system. It signals to the amygdala that things are now well. Remember, trauma gets stored in the parts of your body where it's as if it's still happening. So EFT helps you to train your amygdala to realize that what's happening, what you're bringing up, is from the past and that you are now safe. And something else that's powerful is certain breathwork practices. For example, the breathwork that I use in the Thriver School of Transformation is circular breathing, that the theory behind it is that it calms your default mode network. And your default mode network acts as like the gatekeeper of your limbic network, where a lot of trauma is stored, where there are no words, where we can't get there with words and logic. And so when that gatekeeper, so to speak, has its restraint lifted, then through the breathwork exercise, we're able to kind of have access to unprocessed trauma and process and release it in a way that helps you to let it go. Okay, those are certain ones. There's a lot of other modalities, I'm sure, that are out there that are helpful. These are the ones that I'm most familiar with. And just to let you know, in the Thriver School of Transformation, we have weekly EFT and we have weekly breathwork. So if you want the consistency of weekly assistance, where we're learning the cognitive aspects of how to rewire your nervous system and your brain after trauma, as well as having access to somatic modalities like EFT and breathwork, make sure you check us out in the Thriver School of Transformation. $79.99 a month. You get between 9 and 12 live meetings, and you join an amazing international community of people that are on the same journey. So you feel less alone in the process. Okay, the doors to enrollment close the 31st of December for 3 months. It will reopen again in April. So if you do want to try us out now, make sure you do so by the 31st.